Donald Trump finally admitting that he is serious about a possible third term, because up until now it's been kind of joke, ha ha, elbow, elbow. And now he says he's not joking about this. He really thinks that this might be a possibility. So I saw this story and I started thinking about all the ways that seem unconstitutional, and then all the ways how possibly MAGA might be able to find a loophole. And then I saw a story about Trump making changes to our elections and whether that's lawful. And then the Wisconsin story with Musk doling out cash. And I thought, I have so many legal stories that I just cannot wait until Thursday to talk to my favorite lawyer, my favorite former federal prosecutor turned defense attorney. You've heard him across the globe. He, I hope that if I ever got in real trouble, I'd be able to afford him, but probably not. He is the amazing David Katz. David Katz, everybody.
Great to be with you. Normally I'm on
Hey,
Thursday at noon, but great
yes,
to be on with you for this Monday. There's so much legal news, right?
there's so much legal news. So you heard about this Trump thinking he's serious now about a third term. And so I dragged out I have a little pocket constitution and I was looking at the 22nd Amendment. And here it is, David Katz. Because Trump says he means this. He thinks this is serious. The Constitution reads, no person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice, and no person who has held the office of president or acted as president for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected president shall be elected to the office of president more than once. So if someone died or left office and you served 2 years of their term, that counts. Right? Then you can only be elected once more, is how I read that. It doesn't apply to anyone who was president when this article was proposed by Congress or when it was ratified. So it seems pretty clear to me you can only serve 2 terms, even if one of those terms is only a partial term. Is it as cut and dry as I think it is?
Trump cannot run for president a third time. That much is clear. They'd have to do some kind of loophole or some kind of, prestidigitation, some clever thing, which we can get into in a minute. But there's a little history. There's FDR, who was the president for over 12 years, and he was elected 4 times, and then he died in office during World War II. And so the idea was that he had such an advantage when he ran that they said, no incumbent should have that advantage of running more than twice. So in that sense, I mean, there's some philosophy, there's some argument that Trump could possibly make that he's not that guy who ran over and over again, that he had this discontinuous, this interrupted period. But the Constitution doesn't say that. The 22nd Amendment doesn't say that. And so that would fail in the courts. And the other part of it, which is interesting, is LBJ. So LBJ becomes president when JFK is assassinated on November 22nd, 1963. So by the time that LBJ ran in November 64, he was that person who had not served more than 2 years of JFK's term. That's why there was a question whether he would run in 68. And everyone agreed he could have won. He could have run in 68. He decided famously in March 1968 not to run for president again, but he could have. That's that somewhat confusing language in there. So LBJ could have served as president for 9 years and change. But if JFK had been assassinated, let's say 2 years earlier, and LBJ had finished his term, then he couldn't have served for 11 years. That's this kind of confusing thing in there. But there's no question, to answer your question,
Okay.
that Trump cannot serve, or he cannot run a third time unless he got the Constitution amended. That's not going to happen. That requires, among other things, 3/4 of the states. There is no way that 3/4 of the states would vote for such a constitutional amendment. So the way that I think that he would try to do it, what he has in mind, is to have Vance or maybe Ivanka Trump run, and he would run as vice president. Then he would not be a person who was elected president 3 times. And then he would try to have an agreement with them. And I think this would be known to the voters that this was the loophole. This was the clever way he thought to get around the Constitution. He would not be elected anything but vice president. And then the deal would be that they would step aside and let him serve. Now, once somebody's president of the United States, as Biden showed us, they don't really want to step aside. They don't want to
No.
step aside after one term, and they sure don't want to step aside after a week or a month. But I mean, the idea was that Vance is so obedient and would presumably get so much money and so much benefit from
Yeah.
this guy. I think it was Thiel who supported him and gave him all that huge money so he could be a senator from Ohio in the first place. He gets so much money from Musk that they would make it worth Vance's while, and Vance really would step aside and say, no, I'm going to step aside and let my vice president. It's hard to believe that the voters would ever go for such an obvious sham, but they elected Trump this time. So a lot of people who predicted they wouldn't elect him this time,
Right.
this could never happen. It happened. So I think that's what Trump has in mind.
But it's so unconstitutional that I want to believe, and perhaps I'm naive here, I want to believe that whether you're a Trump voter or not, it's so egregiously unconstitutional to have the same person, even in kind of an unofficial way, serving that third term, that the voters wouldn't go for that.
It's hard to believe the voters would go for that. There's some history in the states where there are term limits, where governors have had their wife run for
Right.
governor. And then the male, it's always been a man and a woman, I think, so far in American history. The male governor who's popular but can't run again because of term limits, like they can't be governor more than twice, just like Trump can't be president more than twice, can't run for president more than two times. They've done that. And then the idea is that, the little lady just lets the male governor that people know, wink, wink, they're really voting for
Yeah.
when they vote for the wife of the popular male governor. But, but the ironic thing about it is that who would be the two likely suspects? The likely suspect would be Melania. She wasn't born in the United States. That wouldn't
Can't
work.
do it.
The,
Nope.
the Southern governor's old time strategy, that wouldn't work with Melania. It also wouldn't work with Musk. One reason that Musk is kind of safe for Trump, and as he's actually said, I'm not worried about it. He wasn't born in the United States. So
Right.
I don't think we're going to see Musk running against Vance one of these days in the future. But I think that's what he has in mind. Of course, what also terrifies people is that he has in mind martial law. He has in mind serving in 2028, not because he wins any election whatsoever, but he's found some excuse to declare martial law. He somehow invoked the Insurrection Act.
Right.
He's had his little timid, cowardly Republican senators all go along with this. And the Democrats and everybody else in the country with common sense would be screaming and yelling like you are right now. This is unconstitutional. What are you talking about? Where's this insurrection? What's your basis for the Insurrection Act? And people are also scared that, of course, Milley, when he was head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, wouldn't have stood for anything like that. By the way, they found a pretext to fire the current Joint Chiefs of Staff. And so you're really worried that there'd be a malleable military, a go-along military, and that they would find an excuse. And so that would be the way that he would serve in 2028. But I got to believe America is not about to allow even these Republican senators, well, they'll stop at something. And I think what they'll stop at, if not anything else, is not allow him to assert the Insurrection Act. I don't think there'd be any insurrection that's worthy of it. People will demonstrate peacefully. People who do violent things, like the people who attack violently Tesla, the people who burn Tesla charging stations, everyone agrees they should be prosecuted. But
Sure.
that's not an insurrection. I mean, we had the Weather Underground, right? That wasn't in the late 60s, early 70s. That wasn't an insurrection that challenged the country any more than some Tesla terrorist challenges the country law and order, to the extent that there would be an invocation of the Insurrection Act. But I think that's what people are worried about. The constitutional amendment, changing it, that won't work, Kim. There's no way in the world that would work for Trump.
Well, they say, David, that they're going to convene a constitutional convention to look at amendments. But it was my understanding that constitutional amendments take years for all the states to finally ratify.
What they're talking about is a think tank, but a real constitutional convention has all of these protections. So they would never have any power unless, this huge majority of Congress said there should be a constitutional convention to consider whether to change the 22nd Amendment. We have had amendments to the Constitution without having a constitutional convention. The Senate and the House both approve it by a supermajority. It then goes for ratification to the states.
Hmm.
And then you need three-fourths of the states. You're not going to get three-fourths of the states by 2028 to say, wow, this is a great idea. Let's have Trump run for a third term. The other joke is that if somehow they ever got this through, we'd have Obama again.
Wow. You know what? I think Democrats would say on principle, no, we wouldn't. We wouldn't. That we'd be able to find someone else because we disagree with, you
Right,
know,
right.
stamping on the Constitution in such a way.
But that was a joke that it would, if somebody
Yes,
could run for a third term,
it'd
Obama
be
would beat
him. Yes, yes. Let's go to this other thing that happened this weekend, which is that Trump made some changes via an executive order to the election system. And a lot of people are upset because they're saying that what he did illegally takes power away from the states. He will require proof of citizenship to register as a voter. Election day return deadlines for mailed ballots. Um, and there are election officials and state attorneys general and legal experts that saying this is all going to bring legal challenges because you can't take election power away from states like this.
We can do those one at a time. But
Yeah.
the overall view is that I don't think it's going to be worth the paper it's printed on. Of course, one of the things with Trump is to be a disruptor, to own the libs, to drive people with common sense crazy. And then when they go crazy because what he's doing is so in violation of the Constitution and the rule of law, then to say they have Trump derangement syndrome, it might be better called love of the Constitution and common sense syndrome. Um, we have a very unique system in the United States. We don't have centralized federal elections. We have elections state by state, including for president. And so you have to go through all of these arcane state-based rules, and then someone comes out the winner. And then, like you see on AP, it used to be late at night on election day. Now it's usually a day or two later. You see Pennsylvania votes for Obama, or Illinois votes for Clinton. And then you see that with Florida went the nation, right? We have expressions like that. Well, with Florida went the nation, or with Ohio went the election. What we mean is that the candidate for president has complied with all of the rules and regulations of the state of Ohio. The state of Ohio has counted the vote in Ohio, and Ohio has certified, whoever it is, Kennedy, Nixon, the winner, Trump, Biden, the winner. And so there's really a small federal role in elections. Of course, Trump has tried to take this giant footprint of the federal government on state elections, including state elections for federal office. So all of these states, or not all, but many of the states and the state attorneys general and the state secretaries of state are going to file lawsuits basically saying, we control the elections in this state, not the federal government. And whatever Trump just did is completely null and void in my state. Now, would some of the red states not challenge it? I think even the red states would challenge it because they have some self-respect and some idea that the states make the state rules. And at some point, this abdication to a federal official, even if it's Trump, I think will be too much for the red states. But let's go through them one at a time. Now, you mentioned some of the things that he's talking about maybe changing, Kim.
Right.
Um,
One is to require proof of citizenship when you register to vote.
So each state determines what proof is necessary. There's also a real constitutional challenge because there's two problems. People's sort of rah reaction, like if you're just sitting around in a bar, talking to a bunch of guys, yeah, everybody should have to show that they're a citizen.
Sure.
There are a lot of people. Think of the dynamics of trying to prove, putting the burden on the voter that the voter is a citizen. There's basically only one of two ways to do that under most of these really strict rules. One is to show a passport. Less than half of Americans have a passport. The other way is to show a birth certificate. That means you have to go get a hold of your birth certificate. You can be an older person, you can be a disabled person. The other problem with finding a birth certificate that matches your name is that many women still, but especially women, have traditionally taken their husband's surname. So they're going to have a birth certificate that says Mary Smith, but their current name is Mary Jones. That person's going to have a lot of trouble with the states where you have to produce either a passport or a birth certificate, producing a birth certificate that backs up her claim that Mary Jones, now her married name, should be allowed to vote. That is a real thing that affects millions of people. And the other thing is that these states scrutinize very much who actually votes, Kim. So they look through and make sure that, they check the rolls. Sometimes they overcheck the rolls. They delete people who shouldn't be deleted, but they have all the means in the world to check and to make sure that this 85-year-old person, or this disabled person, is indeed a citizen, has a right to vote. But to put the burden on the
Right.
85-year-old person to go show up at some election office somewhere and to produce documentation that proves that the person's a citizen, they may have voted since they were 25 years old, or to make the disabled person go down there, it really is unfair. The states don't think it makes any sense. And of course, the reality for Trump is that he knows that the older people, the disabled people, a lot of the women, those aren't his voters. His voters tend to be, there are of course some exceptions, but tend statistically not to be women. They tend not to be even older people now. And with what he has in mind for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, he figures the next time around the older people surely won't be voting for him. And so he figures that all of those people who'd have to show proof of citizenship, it's not that he's doing anything about non-citizens voting, it's that he's doing something about people who don't like Trump voting and making it a real hassle and headache for them to produce documents and to fulfill this burden. So that I don't think is going anywhere, but it's a good talking point for him and the MAGA base and the guys who just don't think about it at all and think, rah, rah, I don't want non-citizens voting.
You got
Let's
me really thinking about how I could prove that I'm the same person on my birth certificate because my married name and my maiden name are different. So how do I show that I'm the same Kim McAllister on my birth certificate as my married name on my driver's license? How do I prove that I'm that same person?
You'd be disenfranchised,
Yeah.
which when, what was the other one that you were talking about he wants to do?
Those were the 2 main ones, I think. Yeah, the election day return deadline for mail-in ballots.
He has no power over that. The
Yeah.
Constitution says that the time, place, and manner of
Mhm.
voting shall be determined by the states. If a
Yeah.
state, and this is totally fair, there's no way to, this is an official stamp. So you have to have sent in your ballot by election day. No monkey business. Okay. And then the mail is just logical, takes a couple of days to,
Right.
to actually send it to the
Yeah.
voting center. And so if you voted by election day, then the states give you 5 days for it to be received, 7 days for it to be received. But Trump also knows that the people who actually go in and vote in the booth, right, are better for him than the mail-in people. That's kind of worked out. He's gotten some mail-in people back this last time, but you remember in 2020 when Biden won, the mail-in vote, the people who were really scared about COVID and wanted to mail in their ballot, they broke for Biden. And he figures in the future, Trump figures he wants for himself and the Republicans the people who go into the voting booth, not the people who are mailing in. And then, the head of the post office just quit. They want to take over the post office. They have in mind that the Trump folks have in mind making it very hard to vote by mail by all sorts of nefarious means.
So let's move to Wisconsin, where our friend Elon Musk over the weekend popped up, spoke to a couple thousand people, saying that this is very important. This whole race for the spot on the Wisconsin Supreme Court so important that he had to be there in person and don his cheese head. He
I've
said,
proudly, I've proudly worn a cheese head. My wife
"Yes."
is from Wisconsin. We have both proudly worn cheese heads. It disgraces the cheese head symbol everywhere to have it on this multi-billionaire's head who's trying to destroy with chaos the federal government employees. But continue, please.
So he says this comes down to the future of our civilization. So drama much, but he says it's the issue of redrawing congressional maps. It's on the table, very important. So he's offering money. And I guess a couple of lower courts said we're not going to take this case. And then the Wisconsin Supreme Court said we're not going to take this case. So out Trump comes with $2 million checks, two $1 million checks, giving them to voters. The Democrat who brought the lawsuit says in Wisconsin, it's illegal to pay people to participate in an election. So what he's doing here is illegal, but the courts won't take the case. And I'm so confused.
Okay. Uh, Legally, I think that the Democrats don't have the better of this fight. And I try to give my legal opinion, not
Mhm.
right, not left, but right, not wrong. The background of this one is that you're not allowed to have a lottery, which was the issue in Pennsylvania. He had a lottery during the Trump Biden contest in 2024. And he said that people who signed a paper that said they believed in the First and Second Amendment were going to be eligible to get $1 million. And then the way it was skewed, it basically induced Republican leaning people to register to vote more than it did Democratic leaning people. It was skewed that way. It actually worked. And then the Pennsylvania authorities said that that was an illegal lottery, and they either couldn't get to court. Anyway, they didn't get a ruling in time. This is basically Musk, and it was Musk who gave away the $2 million checks. Musk basically set up the same sort of thing in Wisconsin. That giveaway was allegedly in violation of state law. That might have not have been the best fight for the attorney general to have picked, because I think basically the law was not on his side. Bear in mind, the Supreme Court in Wisconsin is 4-3 Democratic.
Mm-hmm.
And none of them took the case or voted in favor of the attorney general against Musk. So I think that what Musk did is legal. And that was to basically set up a giveaway contest and to give 2 Wisconsin voters $1 million each. Let me say this, a nuclear conflagration definitely would imperil civilization. Whether the Wisconsin Supreme Court ends up 4-3 Democratic or 4-3 Republican, well, I'd like to see it go Democratic, and I think that they would do the right thing on redistricting. Will not, everybody relax, it will not imperil civilization.
Okay, well, that's good to know. It's good to know that Musk can't shift the earth that much. So there's another story that I saw, and this one I have video that I want to share with you, because Commerce Secretary Lutnick went on Fox and Friends, and he said, hey, everybody, it's a great time for us all to go out and support Elon Musk and buy Tesla stock. And I thought I'd share the video with you, because now there are multiple calls for investigations against Mr. Lutnick. People are pretty upset, saying you can't do that.
That's a violation. That's a violation of the Hatch Act. It's pretty clear. Go ahead.
Yeah, let's watch the video. See if you think this is illegal.
Build the next generation technology. I think if you want to learn something on this show tonight, buy Tesla. It's unbelievable that this guy's stock is this cheap. It'll never be this cheap again. When people understand the things he's building, the robots he's building, the technology he's building, people are going to be dreaming of today and Jesse Waters and thinking, gosh, I should have bought Elon Musk's stock. I mean, who wouldn't invest in Elon Musk? You got to be kidding.
Sorry, so you're okay. Illegal or okay?
Who wouldn't invest in Tesla stock the last month or two? All of the smart money on Wall Street. That stock has been absolutely hammered. And, you know, you could have predicted this. And actually, I did predict this, because my wife is a very good stock picker. And I told her, sell Tesla. I don't know anything about the market, but sell Tesla. I told her 2 months ago. And the reason was, and I think that the stock market recognized this, Kim, is that when you become this toxic, this hated, this much of a symbol for all the things that Musk has become a symbol for, and you have a consumer-based product, this doesn't make any sense as a marketing or sales strategy. You remember the Republicans hammered Budweiser over this Bud Light commercial that they said was too gay friendly. Yeah. And they brought the stock price down. All that Budweiser did in that situation was to basically have an ad agency tell them to run this particular commercial, right? And the commercial ended up, offending, these red-blooded American guys who voted for Trump. I don't know exactly why, but they had one of their celebrities, such as Trump celebrities are, take out on like an automatic and shoot Bud Lights or something, and yeah. And Bud Light really didn't try to antagonize its market. But when you see that 4/5 of the people who bought Tesla cars, I think, were Democrats, 4/5 of them identified as liberals. One of the reasons they wanted to have a Tesla was because it was a green, the green thing, Kim, right? That it was not gasoline, right? Yeah. And so for him to so publicly be on Trump's side, and then the thing with the government employees, this chaos that he's caused, and they haven't done this in a sensible, tailored way. You could have guessed. I mean, you would have thought that Musk went short on Tesla because it was so likely that Musk's actions were going to drive Tesla down precipitously, and that's what it did. One thing I would love to know is whether that presenter on Fox went out and bought some stock after he got that great tip from Lutnick. I bet he did. I bet he shed his stock. The stock is going down. Now, I think Musk's calculation, I'm not a mind reader, is that he can get enough sweetheart deals from Trump that he can make up for the disastrous loss of money. But he's not the world's richest person anymore. You know, he's not, because Tesla has gone down so much, it's tanked so much. And I don't know, maybe they're going to sell the car in China, but I think Tesla is doomed as a brand in America with consumers. That's, again, I'm not a stock picker. Don't anybody buy or sell Tesla based on what I just said, but the market is selling it. The market wants to get rid of it.
Well, I don't know if this is going anywhere, but there's now 13 Democrats, including Maxine Waters, Elizabeth Warren, and they are all saying that the acting director of the ethics office needs to investigate whether Lutnick violated the federal ethics law by urging this investment in Tesla.
Do you remember this? What was her name? Conway? What? Kellyanne Conway.
Oh, yeah. How could we
When
forget
when Trump
Conway?
went through
Alternative facts.
right, exactly. When Trump went through the first time, she went on some program, I think Fox and Friends, and said something laudatory about some product. And I think she was either sanctioned under the Hatch Act, or she had to, don't take my word for it, but my recollection is that was seen as a big faux pas. And
It
now,
was
of course,
she said, "Go buy Ivanka's clothing or products."
right.
Yeah.
But now there are not the same guardrails. Lutnick doesn't seem to have any compunction. And of course, what's unbelievable is they've already reported that he owns hundreds of $millions worth of Tesla stock. I should have put him on the group chat with my wife, and maybe he could have shed his hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Tesla stock, but he didn't. So now he's holding this bag, which has very little left in it, of what used to be hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. So he seems to be someone who's just completely craven. He seems to be somebody who he doesn't want to lose any more money on the Tesla stock he's still holding. And so he has a chance to be on the media. And he says, go buy this stuff. This stuff is going down, is falling down. I'm holding it. Please go buy some so it'll tilt back up. So he absolutely should be investigated for this. And there need to be these kind of guardrails. These aren't just like some kind of talking points about the Hatch Act. That's a real thing, that they're not supposed to hawk products. Now you can say, well, didn't Trump do that? Didn't he do that used car salesman thing when he said, I'm going to buy a Tesla? He said in front of the White House. But of course, Trump has acted like he's above the law. That doesn't mean that his officials are above the law. By the way, they don't have that Supreme Court decision about presidential immunity. There's no Secretary of Commerce immunity from the Hatch Act or from anything else. So yes,
better watch it, Lutnick.
He should be. He will be investigated. But the problem is that everyone says they should be investigated. These laws should be enforced. They've gotten rid of the inspectors general at agency after agency. At some point, who's going to enforce it? Now they're going after these law firms. We can talk about that if you want to, about the LA federal prosecutor. But they've gone after these law firms. I talked about that with Mark. Paul Weiss didn't really fight back. They made a deal. You can say that was craven, that was cowardly, but I'm sure that they had their business reasons, Paul Weiss in New York City. Meanwhile, two of the other firms, Jenner and Block, fought and got a court order. One of them, Wilmer Hale, is another famous law firm. I don't know if he went back there, but that's the one that Ali Mayorkas was from. And that firm fought, and a lot of their partners were in the courtroom. And I think they're going to win. What's hard about it is that when it comes to government contracts, if some government contractor doesn't want to hire you, you can complain and complain, but at some point you're not really going to get relief. You're not going to get relief or a remedy from the courts, which is as good as getting the government business, right? You're going to not get this piece of government business and not get that piece of government business, and you're going to complain. And you know what? You're going to end up on the short end of the stick, at least during Trump's time. And I think that's what Paul Weiss, that law firm, calculated. And the other problem is that if lawyers, if people start to think that this lawyer, I need a lawyer who's Trumpy. It's not enough that I have a great lawyer. It's not enough that I have a lawyer who has a huge amount of experience in this area. Like I have 35 years of experience in federal criminal defense. I mean, I really know how to handle those kind of cases. But if some client thinks, well, I'm not Trumpy enough, or they think that, Wilmer Hale in Washington, D.C. is not Trumpy enough, they're going to go hire somebody else. I mean, that's just, people pick their lawyers and they pick lawyers. You know, I have competitors here, who used to be the U.S. attorney. Believe me, they use the fact that they were the U.S. attorney to get cases, and not in an improper way, but they use whatever they can ethically to try to sell themselves to clients. And the competing firms that are in with the Trump administration, believe me, it will be connoted that they're a better, you have hundreds of millions of dollars at stake. You have your liberty at stake. You're the CEO of one of these huge corporations. And so, you get the hint to hire somebody Trumpy. You could say that happens with every administration. The Democrats come in, the Republicans come in, but it's much more. I mean, it's always with Trump that there's not only a quantitative difference, but there seems like there's a qualitative difference, that he'll just do anything. And of course, people have to brace themselves and do whatever is legal and possible back, because Trump is not stopping. It's not like Trump has some internal guardrail. Where's the proof? Anyone who says he has an internal guardrail or external guardrail, show me your proof over these last 2 months.
What makes me sad about what you said is that it indicates to me that if someone's looking for a Trumpy lawyer, they've lost faith in the system and the fairness of the system, and they're solely looking for someone that can bring them influence with the judge.
And your point is?
Yeah, I guess that's it. Yeah, that's it. You mentioned, though, the firing of this Los Angeles prosecutor.
Oh, this is great stuff.
This guy, he was fired, and the thinking is that he was probably fired because he was connected to a lawsuit that was brought against a Trump donor. He was a federal prosecutor, now a former federal prosecutor, much like yourself, Adam Schleifer.
I didn't get fired by anybody, including I didn't get fired by the president.
He was fired on Friday, and it was likely because of his connection to this case. One of Trump's top donors was involved in this, and I guess Trump is taking it out on Mr. Schleifer.
So there is a fellow named Andrew Widerhorn. I want to say this correctly. Andrew Widerhorn. He is the former CEO of Fatburger and Johnny Rocket. Right. He's indicted for having misallocated basically, for fraud regarding $47 million. I'm not making this up. He's already been previously convicted in a scandal, federal financial scandal in Oregon. So he is an ex-felon as we speak, now indicted on these huge charges. He has a former U.S. attorney named Nick Hanna. Nick Hanna was the U.S. attorney under Trump the first time. He's at Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher. They're a famous, Republican-leaning firm in Los Angeles. So this Andrew Widerhorn, for his new federal criminal case, hires this Nick Hanna, who was the U.S. attorney under Trump the first time. And he has apparently complained that Widerhorn is getting the short end of the stick. It's not a fair case. And, the answer is, if there are legal or factual deficiencies in the case, that's what we have the courts for. The case is scheduled for trial. File your motions, go to trial, win the case. You're a huge law firm with loads and loads of money behind you. Go try to win the case. And I think that this pressure actually boomeranged. I think that this is going to be a boomerang. I think the whole world is going to watch U.S. versus Andrew Widerhorn, former CEO of Fatburger and Johnny Rocket, and say, let's make sure that there was no shenanigans here. I mean, one of the reasons why these things boomerang is we have the LA Times that just did a huge story about it. We have the New York Times. They're not going to just let it alone. And the implication of the LA Times story is that somehow these charges are going to be dismissed. Boy, I don't think so. As I understand it, they found a firearm. That one of the charges is that he's a felon in possession of a firearm, right? Felony from the federal case in Oregon, firearm possession allegedly here. They're going to dismiss felon in possession of a firearm. Let's see if Trump and Attorney General Bondi are really going to do that. So I think that this was really against this particular prosecutor. And so I think that your account of it is from the newspaper. But here's my take on it. This is my former office. My take on it, this fellow, apparently a brilliant lawyer, Andrew, he's not Andrew. What's his name, the prosecutor?
His name is...
Andrew's the defendant.
Yeah, his name is, sorry, Adam Schleifer.
Adam. Okay, Adam.
Yeah,
How did you say that?
Schleifer.
Schleifer. So
Yeah.
Schleifer, brilliant guy. And here's an interesting aspect of this. He's from a very rich family. Um, and he ran for Congress as a Democrat, came in second in White Plains, Westchester, someplace like that, Upper Bronx, Yonkers. He came in second. So when he didn't win, he mounted a good campaign. He's a Democrat, so of course he was, attacking Trump's record, the Republicans' record. That's what you do when you run as a Democrat, right? So then he went, after he lost, he went back. He got his job as a federal prosecutor in L.A. He has this major case, corporate fraud case that he's bringing. So I think that the MAGA crowd it stirred up this feeling against him. I think they probably read back the statements that he'd made against Trump when he ran as a Democratic candidate. And I hope that that's all it's about. I looked it up in Pacer, which is the records. There's another assistant U.S. attorney who was assigned to the case. I don't believe he's been fired. So this one may have just been personally against that assistant U.S. attorney. Yes, it's chilling to be fired because you ran for Congress on the other party. But at the same time, it's not that chilling for just two reasons, if I can say this. Number one, that's not the normal assistant U.S. attorney. The normal assistant U.S. attorney has not run for Congress on the other party from the one that's in power right now. I mean, a lot of people in his situation, I'm not saying that he should have, but a lot of people would have said, you know what, I'm going to resign anyway. There's somebody else on this case. I ran as a Democratic candidate. This might not, and I'm not saying that he should have, okay? I'm just saying a lot of people would have in that situation. And I think that this was directed more at him personally, but it was unbelievably rude and unprofessional and chilling by the administration. They apparently sent him an email saying basically, President Trump fired you. Yeah. It's a one line, basically, you've been fired because Trump wants you fired. And all of his phone was turned off. He couldn't get access to his government phone. He couldn't get access to his government computer. And he apparently asked some of his colleagues in my old office, would they mind coming down the hall and at least helping him move his physical files out of the office, I guess, before they said security in there. Musk and his minions and Trump have done that with people, to have these truly humiliating firings where they not only turn over their systems, but they walk them out of the agency that they've served as a public servant. So I think that he and his stuff left thanks to his colleagues before he got walked out. And like I said, he's from this very wealthy family. He seems to be an incredibly talented lawyer. Believe me, he's going to land on his feet. Anyone who feels intimidated by that, keep doing your duty. That guy's going to land on his feet.
David Katz, all my questions have been answered. You're amazing. Thank you for coming in to talk to me special, and we'll see you on Thursday.
It's wonderful. Say hi to Mark for me, and it's always great to be with you and Mark.
Yeah, what a treat. Pleasure. Thank you for coming in. David Katz, everybody.
My pleasure.
Bye.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.